Good afternoon and Assalamu alaikum from Bangladesh. Thank you AABA for this session. Thank you members, Executive Committee, and thank you Dr. Ashraf Ali. And thank you Mr. Ridwanul Islam Lubnan for having undertaken this project. Dear ladies and gentlemen, my paper is titled Nobayon. You may think of it as Renaissance, renewal, etc. You have in front of you somewhere an abstract. I'm going to read a part of the abstract to get this part of the program started. Bangladesh needs a new political vision and corresponding organization and planning to reflect its new reality. The political themes of pre-1947 and pre-1971 are no longer valid. I suggest that a socio-economic emancipation drive should be at the heart of the next generation's political agenda. Bangladesh is simply an industrially aspiring country, an IAC. In its first phase, Bangladesh needs to go flat out with resource conservation, intergroup synergy, promoting appropriate technology-driven, market-expanding, and profit-sharing bid for achieving self-sustained industrialized status in about 30 years. This time span is not only possible but also critical for a nation headed toward a population of 235 million by 2050. Such a status has been achieved in a similar time frame by China, South Korea, and Taiwan. The window of opportunity is limited, with dozens of countries in Asia, Africa, South and Central America competing toward such an end. The ideology of the current political agenda is counterproductive. Even the secular role model nation India has never been so tough on its majority values as the today's party in power. The last successful leftist secularization model was Vietnam. Without a conflict of that proportion, Bangladesh will neither become secularized nor achieve peace for proper industrialization. It is too late for having such a conflict in Bangladesh. To say that the end game of 1971 was precisely this is patently false and wishful reading of history. Besides, this desired alteration of the being of Bangladesh's 90% majority is unnecessary. However, if by secularism we mean equal opportunity, accountability, and transparency for all historical population groups, then there is no problem. Secularism cannot mean the end of religiosity for Bangladesh. To the extent today's political agenda makes Bangladesh lose critical decades, it is A, intellectual, A, disservice, and a crime. Now, Bangladesh needs a vision, a durodrishti, for this political agenda, which has to be based on economic realities of the 21st century. If we go back in history, we see that Western Europe and North America industrialized in between 100 and 150 years to a point where they were self-sustaining industrialized nations. They started around 1750 to 1800 and they finished by 1900. Japan, with its Meiji Restoration in 1878, took 60 years to reach the same status. In 1941, in plain 63 years, it did the Pearl Harbor bombing. India has been going at it for 67 years without achieving the middle income status. Bangladesh has to reach an amount of $7,140 per capita income by 240, and that's a conservative number. If we were to consider the realities of Bangladesh, Ek Jhalke Bangladesh, we would look at population, GDP, FDI, economic growth rate, and inflation rate. In this particular slide, we look at Prabridhi and Mullaspiti, growth and inflation. I have listed a group of countries, 6 countries, and I have traced real GDP growth rate for these 6 countries for 2 years and annual inflation rate for 2 years. If we look at Bangladesh, in red at the very bottom, we see our numbers for growth rate for 2008 and 2013 being 6% and 5.8% respectively. It is very similar or even better than countries like India and Pakistan of that period. As far as annual inflation rate is concerned, Bangladesh is no worse, is 8.9% and 7.5% is no worse than what Pakistan and India suffered in the same years.